Yeah, coming back from where I left off, yeah, they had a lot of emotional trauma, and it was like that those limbs were being amputated, and God had to heal and cauterize those wounds properly before He allowed them to gain access to you in a fullness of capacity, or else they were going to bleed all over you. And I'm not talking about in a way that is like, okay, let me heal you. We gonna get through this. No, they would have been lashing out and acting confusing. Let me tell you, because I know, because I watched it happen to a male that was associated with me. Parental figure. Raising all kinds of hell as I stood in the gap in prayer for them. That as those things are being dealt with, they ain't gonna like it. But meanwhile, they still gotta walk through it. Now, meanwhile, they end up in the upper mezzanine because they go to an upper library area that's in the higher part of the library. I think it was like 3 or 4 floors to that library, but they ended up in the top part in the back hall. So when they went up, they had to start a fire because it was a fireplace in that room. So they needed to start burning the books in order for the fire to be done. Some people think that they're in a level of authority, that they don't like their authority being usurped. This is a problem with people that operate under the combination spirits of pride, Jezza, and Narc. Okay? They all operate together. And this is the person that they gotta appear like they in control. I'm in control of this. When they wanted to start throwing the books into the fireplace, they're like, nah, don't start throwing the books. He's like, what are we gonna burn then? We in here, we freezing, we need to burn the paper. Some of them people don't want you to destroy the information. Lord, you want me to say that? Because I can say it. I'm gonna leave it out. Let me just put it to you this way. They don't like their information being destroyed. Monitoring spirits. Because they don't have control in that manner if the information is being destroyed. Catch that, peep that, understand that. They don't feel like they got power because you can see through them if they don't keep you at a specific distance in a full level of operation in which they remain in their level of control. So the two librarians operating at a level of authority are sitting there saying, no, you can't do that, destroying the information. On top of that, the irony was once everybody got settled and the fire had really started burning, the male, catch that, is the man sitting there in the corner holding on to this humongous volume of what? Say it with me, y'all. Say it with me. It was the Bible. He was holding the Bible. It's like, oh. Woman walked up and said, you Christian? He said, no, I'm not Christian. This is the only book, one of the oldest books ever written, the first book ever written. I am not allowing them to burn this. So I'm going to hold on to it. Some of your enemies is holding on to the Bible thinking that they're going to use that to see if they can turn that stuff against you. I lie to you not. I saw a post, as God is my witness, I saw a post from a young woman that I follow on YouTube. She literally said, some of these counterfeits out here literally tried to pull, what do you call it? The 3 Hebrew boys He went up there and sat up there and said, "We going to use God's word like everybody else using God's word." And you know them demons slapped that. Some of the counterfeits out here done grabbed the Bible thinking, "Oh my God, I'm going to use God's word. I'm going to use God's word just like they do, because when they use God's word against me, it works. So if I use God's word, then it's going to..." If you don't serve my God, for one, you coming against me with my God, that's like we sisters. You the evil sister. I'm the good sister. You've been out here doing all this badness, but you gonna go to daddy. And daddy favor me because I'm his child, and he know you doing wrong, and you gonna come to him with his own word in hopes to punish me. And he know what I do. Not to mention, you serving a completely different God. It don't work. So some of your enemies holding on to the Bible thinking that they can have the ability to come against you with it. Operating in a religious spirit. I'm going to give Megan Michelle the due that she is due and say this. She said two things that blew my mind, and that is this. I'm going to get it right here. That Jezebel uses people's heart wounds because they are afraid that person will leave them. Some of y'all family members, friends, and associations are terrified that when you go into this promised land, they'll never be able to use you, abuse you, or have access to you no more. It's actually inverted love. They fully love you, but don't know how to express it. Just like that child. Think about it. They operating it childishly. Just like the child that would beat up a girl that he actually liked. Instead of saying, "I like you," "I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you, pull your hair. I'm going to mess your dress up. I'm going to do all this kind of stuff." It's like, "I like you, but I'm going to abuse you." Contrary. People operating in a religious spirit. This man holding on his Bible, operating under a religious spirit. Go after widows and orphans, is what she said. Thank you, Pretty Daisy. Love you, girl. So, yeah. These people operating in higher authority think that they have the ability to talk about you because they have an appearance that they're in a level of authority position. And God has already given you the authority, and it's visible on you. But he hasn't changed your appearance to look like the people operating in the vain authority. Just because they got the clothes and the cars and all that kind of stuff. And terrified, especially the counterfeits, terrified that they gonna lose it all. If your spouse comes to you, because now you gonna start looking just as good. So they try to come at you spiritually passive aggressively with all these spiritual warfare attacks to come against you with beauty spells to make you look ugly. Warfare to come against you in all kinds of ways. Because in all actuality, they are terrified that if you get your look right, if you get that hair, them nails, them this, that other stuff, the makeup, all of that, and you start coming out here looking gorgeous, it's a wrap. Zero. You done. Done. But the fact of the matter is, they were done before you started looking good. Because God already deposed them and moved them out the way, and they just mad. Can't stop it. So they would prefer to accuse you and say, oh, you're a widow. You don't got no husband. You did this, that, and the other, while they trying to hold on yours. Trying to keep them with a vice grip away. Well, you ain't got no husband. It's like, no, I do got a husband. You just trying to hold on. They will project and have your family projecting against you. Family members will run around projecting against you in those same areas. You ain't married. You ain't this. You ain't that. Wait. And then when you are in a state that the enemy also tries to keep you in that state of an orphan spirit, meaning you don't have a belonging place. Some of your spouses, the reason that they didn't want to walk away from certain things was because they felt they belonged finally, but it was an artificial belonging because truthfully, their heart knew that they didn't belong to be there in the first place. Should have been had left. But the people pleaser in them was using that orphan spirit to cater to those individuals. And those people were using them for everything that they could take away from them. And they only really saw it when God allowed all those folks to leave. They got to see why they was using them. They got to see the exposure. And some of them, and I'm going to tell you this, the Lord let me hear a song several months back from The Weeknd called I Don't Want to Know. Some of them didn't want to know. Some of them knew plain as day that these people were using them. Jesus knew Judas was taking the money. Jesus wasn't stupid. But he was in hopes that Judas would change. But he knew what Judas was going to do. He was Jesus. He knew all that stuff that was going to happen. He sat in God's presence too much to not know. This is why our enemies are mad at us right now, because we know that we sit in the presence of God. And in that presence, we get wisdom. Hello? So, they had been in there, they had settled, but the girl started to get sick. She was getting warm. She had taken a nap, and when she woke up, her face was burning up. You're reaching a boiling point. You are reaching a boiling point. You internally have been reaching a boiling point. Your frustration has become to a point that God has also been dealing with you. And I keep seeing these videos popping up that you've been burning. Oh. God's been moving certain things at a level and a pace in order to get things in order because you're burning. You may not have understood it. Didn't understand why it was happening. But God allowed it to happen. You know why? Y'all got kids that y'all supposed to be having. And if you don't start, because some of y'all been out of order for years. And God was like, I need to turn that heat up in you. Because if I don't, you're going to just be busy. You and your spouse, in some cases, are alike. Your spouse may be an overthinker and he keeps himself busy. You may do the exact same thing. We ain't out here dealing with no horoscopes or none of that. But certain people under certain capacities, that their personalities operate like that. Okay? Individual personalities operate to that capacity that they actually have to pay attention to make sure that they aren't getting distracted by their own work. They ain't paying attention within their relationship, because their creativity and all of this can cause them to go in two different directions. And in some cases, the distraction of all the other things that you put in your hands to will keep you from. So God will sometimes allow you to get hot and bothered to remind you, I need you to get hot and bothered. For one, I need you to want to be in relation with this individual. Two, I need you to get hot and bothered so that there will be an urgency within you to want to be with this individual. Because that urgency physically within you will make you be more ready when this thing comes. Because some of us, if we didn't even have that burning sensation, because we so used to being with God, it's like, I'm good without the sex, I'm good without the this, I'm good. God, I love you. And God's like, I need to turn that heat up in you. Because if I don't turn that heat up in you, you'll end up apathetic, and then you'll both be apathetic, and then the multiplication and stuff that I need to happen ain't gonna happen, because you over here working, he over here working, and ain't nobody. Hey, I need y'all to get together. I need that heat up in there. So the young man ended up kissing her. This is another reason why he knew that she was warm. You also emanate a warmth about you that your spouse is drawn to. Okay? Not just for sexual desire, but an actual warmth. And in some of these cases, with all of the stuff that's been happening, it's been very cold in their environment. They done lost people, things got cut off, all of this. Your warmth is warming them and drawing them to. She was the warmest person in that situation because she had a fever. They didn't realize that she had a fever and where it was coming from until within about 24 hours of that, she had slipped in a coma. I need you to hear me what I'm saying. Some of y'all, God put to sleep. Anybody else been dealing with God putting you in a state of rest where you couldn't really do too much? A couple weeks ago, he made me sit down and stay in the house. I was like, wait, I can't go out. I can't. He was like, sit in the house. And I knew, because it was certain warnings that he was putting around me at the time that I was listening to. This is, remember, obedience is better than sacrifice. Around that time, I was hearing something spiritually that was saying, stay in the house. But sometimes we're that person. I got to take care of everything. I have to take care of everybody. She was running around trying to make sure everybody had what they needed and doing everything. Matter of factly, due to the fact that everybody left, it got her the ability to rest. Because she wasn't up trying to help deal with and take care of everybody's needs within there and making sure everybody got the food and the blankets and the this, that, and the other. She was in there taking care of everything. She wasn't tending to herself. Some of y'all haven't been tending to yourself in this process. You've been trying to make sure, I got to deal with the house. I got to make sure that I'm dealing with God's business. I got to make sure that I'm taking care of this. I got to make sure I'm doing this. I got to make sure I'm praying, fasting, consecrating, this. And God's like, I need you to go over there and I need you to sit down. Sit down. I'll put you to sleep. And in some cases, spiritually, God has allotted them not to be able to spiritually sense you, because he allowed the communication to be shut up. But with that, it gave them a drive. He was given the wisdom because the librarian went and got one of the books, and the librarian said, does she have any injuries? And one of the young girls said, she told me that her leg was hurting the other day. And they looked at her legs and saw the injury that had already partially healed up. It's like, oh, it's a size. She could have septicemia or something like that. So, and they're like, well, what happens if she has that and she doesn't have any help? They're like, well, she slipped into a coma. She needs some penicillin and or some antibiotic. And they're like, if she doesn't get it, what happens? The woman looked at them with that look, the look. Well, and they were like, pretty much, she gonna die. Your spouse has had a fire put under his butt. You better get where he needs you to go. Because there's certain things that are potentially being prepared to happen that if he don't get there when he's supposed to be getting there, that there are certain things due to the expiration of the season that you're in, baby, he best to get on his P's and Q's and get to getting. That man had to go out, and God is a provider, but he always has a tendency, he gonna stretch you a little bit. They had to go out in the snow, Arctic cold ice weather, to go to the ship to get the medication necessary to help her there. And by ship, I mean a ship had managed to come up out the water due to the amount of water that had come up onto land. But it was perfectly positioned. God will always make sure that your resources are directly where you need them when you need them. I always remember a young woman saying, if you will have it when you need it. If you don't have it right now, it's because you don't need it. But when you need it, it'll be there, and it'll be there right on time. That ship rolled right up in front of that building. And when they came to the discovery of the factor that she had this injury on her leg, and the one thing they needed was penicillin, they like, that ship probably got it on there. But they had to go where it was to go get it. Your spouses have had certain assignments in order to get certain things. Some of the stuff that they've been getting is in preparation to come to you. But God had to put you to sleep so you didn't know what they were doing. You didn't know how they were preparing for you. You didn't have the fullness of understanding. But God was preparing something that you couldn't see. She was asleep the whole time. They were going to go get the medication that she needed. God is sending them to be your rescuer with what it is that you need. Hear me what I'm saying. But you sleep. God hasn't given you all of the details as to what it is that they're coming with, that you need from them. They have already been doing some of that's another part of the delay, because they've been trying to get that stuff together, and they've been fighting tooth and nail, coming to the next part that as he went out there with his friends, and some of them have had godly witnesses and assistants assisting them to get these things, to prepare to get you ready when they get to you. But there were wolves. There were some wolves that escaped from the zoo during the rainstorm, disappeared for like the whole half of the film. Now here these wolves come from somewhere. I don't even know where the heck they came from. But they managed to find their way right when this man was getting ready to get on the boat with his friends. Catch that. He was getting ready to get on the boat. Some of your spouses had to get on the boat, Jonah. Jonah, who went and got on the boat, ended up having to get spit back out. They had to get on the boat to go get what was needed. And this can even go back to the reference of Jesus being on the boat while the storm was happening. But in this case, it wasn't the storm as much as it was the wolves coming. Some of you have been begging God, why has it not that this thing hasn't come together? God put you to sleep, but there were enemies that your spouse could see that you couldn't see. And even if God could see the enemies and neither of them, because they hadn't seen the wolves coming to it simultaneously approach. Okay? As they were getting on the boat to get what was needed for the spouse. There are things that have been being prepared, but there have been wolves, monitoring spirits, all kinds of stuff. I can't, if I told you the things, the Lord, let me see. That have been spiritually culminating because they know. It's like we know that a blessing's about to come around these individuals. And I got confirmation, like 3-4 different confirmations. The enemy is mad because they are literally setting up traps to trap you. When they got in the boat, they went and got what they were going for. But here come these wolves. There are wolves and people that were acting as wolves in sheep's clothing to your spouse in associations that were assisting to help. But because your spouse, for one, wasn't going to leave, no man left behind. He was trying to also protect the people that were protecting him in that season. You see what I'm saying? But there were also wolves in sheep's clothing that were associated and or around y'all or them, observing, sneaking up, preying on them, coming up on them in certain ways in order to try to back them in corners and prevent them from getting out of the situation. But you were put to sleep, so you didn't even see all that stuff that was going on. You didn't know that part of the battle. You didn't understand. But it was through his wisdom to go out of a porthole, come back into the boat, distract them from behind so they would chase him. In some cases, your spouse used something in order to become the bait, in order to distract, in order to lure a conversation, situation, or even to operate in a sense of silence. To lure people that may have been understood to be monitoring at the time away. So some of them had to act stupid. It's like act dumb, act stupid, act like they didn't know. When they felt certain people coming forth to inquire about certain things, to try to back them in the corners about certain things, even to back the people that were assisting them into corners about certain things, because they knew they couldn't come to them directly, so they backed the other people that were assisting them into corners about some things. You see what I'm saying? So your spouse had to run diversion tactics, get out here in football territory, in order to get them to move and maneuver, to shift, so on and so forth. So with that, they ended up having to deal with these traumas, these associations, they had to go and deal with running, dealing with correction, being brought back into alignments, things that were attracted to them, understanding the certain attentions and or attacks that they were dealing with. all because of the territory that they were about to be dealing with, and God desiring to bring forth a level of genuineness, and all of this kinds of stuff was happening in order to bring about confusion. All of this. So with that being said, the attack of the wolves was meant to be a paralytic, to paralyze them from moving, because the level of fear necessary, think about it, in order to keep them from moving, if you were face to face with growling wolves, would you not be paralyzed? And you were also feeling isolated because you can't get out. But he took off running and found him a way out because he had preset the exit point. Some of your spouses already know the preset exit point because God, what? Been telling them. They wasn't quite all that wise to know everything, but they knew what, because you know how God operates. I'll tell you when you get there. And he moved the wall directly when it's time to move. When the enemy think they got you, that's when he moved the wall. And it's like, go. So he jumped out. The wolves ended up smashing their face directly against the glass, bust their nose up. You know how they their whole mouth.